mini session for the Grandpa's Magic Couch. We just went through
All participants are unmuted.
We just went through phase 1, learning to think differently. There is a phase 2, and that is the income machine. How do you build an economic engine? And so in that, there's thinking differently. Then there's trust, how we often trust people we shouldn't and don't trust people we should. So much could be shared on there. And then 2.3, most people think patience is good, but patience can be a silent killer. And so learning the nuances of that, and then the biggest challenge to income owning a company, not a job, and then community business partnerships. And then phase 3 is life vision, passion, leverage, and a whole lot more. And so it's how to discover your life vision. So kids, Grandpa wants you to be very clear. Grandpa discovered his life vision when he was 8 years old. And that's guided my entire life for the last 47 years. And so I'm telling you, once you discover your life vision, everything is amazing. Then seeing, 3.2 is seeing and being. And that's, how do you see big and small? Really important. And then dimensional living. And then 3-4 is the next dimension. And then 5 is unlimited bandwidth. And 6 is leverage. And then we go into phase 4. My biggest challenge is me. Yeah, our biggest challenge is us. Albert Einstein said you can never solve a problem on the level it's created. What does that mean? It means we create our own problems, kids. Grandpa does too. And the only way to solve those problems is to go ahead and think differently. And that's hard to do. As kids, it's hard to do. But it's even harder as adults. And so it's good to get the thinking down when you're kids, because if you have a hard time taking ownership as a child, if you don't get over that, if you don't have generosity as a child, if you don't have discipline as a child, it doesn't get any easier, it gets harder. And so my biggest challenge for me, the secret about time, I'm overwhelmed, intentionality and discipline, why I choose not to succeed. It's not somebody else's issue. Trust me, there's somebody in the world that's had it a lot tougher than you have. I'm just saying. And so, why I choose not to succeed, follow through, and then taking personal ownership. And then we're going to be building out in EC2 family and relationships, help versus healing, multiplication, clone myself. Phase 8 is me and outliers. Phase 9 is business, turn my passions into profit. And so there's lots of other cool things to come here. So that's going to be neat. All right, let's dive in. Questions, thoughts on today's Grandpa's Magic Couch.
I thought it was pretty cool. I think the kids kind of were listening to it. I think having them know their plans for life and having a vision ahead of time might help them, give them direction to make better choices throughout their life.
See, it's interesting. What we don't want to do is somehow, I did not emphasize with at least one of my children. So my 18-year-old, when he was, I think, 15 or 14, maybe 12, I don't know. Maybe he was 12. I think he was 12. I don't remember exact age. But anyways, he said to me, he's like, Dad, I don't know if I'm going to listen to you or whatever. I'm like, excuse me? And I'm like, why do you say that? Again, curiosity. He's like, well, because you don't hit your goals. Excuse me? What are you talking about? He's like, Dad, when I was 9, we had a goal to go over to Thailand. I'm like, okay, I remember that goal. And he said we didn't go. I said, now that's a good point. Now let's take a look at that. Did you do anything to go ahead and earn your way to Thailand? Well, no. So the youngest, who is 18 now, oldest is 30. So when the 30-year-old, when she was, I don't know, Ginger Ann, when she was 12, 13, 14, she decided to go around the country and with her grandparents. And so there was a trip out to the East Coast, where we live in the Chicago area. There was a trip out to the East Coast, and she needed, I don't know, $300-400 to fly out there. So she says, Dad, it's a missions trip with Grandpa and Grandma. It'd be fun. I could help them out. She's going to be working out there, like, 12, 13 years old, making phone calls. And so I said, okay. And she says, can you pay for it? I'm like, no. And she's like 12 years old or 13 years old. And it's like, no. Well, Dad, and then she started whining. Dad, I'm like, sweetheart, you know what? You figure it out. So she came back and she said, well, Dad, what if I open up the East Coast for your company? Now, that's a girl. They call her the siblings, the 6 siblings call her the golden child. They can be the golden child, too. There's a little rule in business, the golden rule. It's whoever's got the gold rule. Sorry, kids, it just is what it is. And so, so she's thinking about another great Grandpa's Magic Couch is Don Crozier, who did shoe shining when he was 7 and 8 years old in Australia. Scottish, parents, and said, hey, if you want something, you have to go out and earn it. Same thing in the Boersma family. Like, hello. And so I'm like, hey, buddy, you're 12 years old and you don't know that if you want to take a trip, you got to earn it. You got to work at it. I mean, even if it's for a good cause. So I said to Ginger Ann, I said, now you're talking. Okay, so let's put together an agreement. So some percentage of your time you're going to make. Like, again, she's a 12-year-old, so she's 13-year-old, whatever she was. Now, what she didn't know is the East Coast can be a little bit, it's not like the Midwest. It's not like the West. They can be a little bit, let's say, more direct with you. So funded the trip. She went out there. After a day of it, I'm going to just call her 13. I don't know. Again, I'll just say it's 13. If she's there, she can correct me. But so she calls me up, and she's crying. It's like, Dad, people are hanging up on me. They're hanging up on me, and they're swearing at me, Dad. So I'm like, okay, sweetheart. What do you want to do? Well, Dad, I want to stop making calls because they're swearing at me and they're hanging up on me. I'm like, okay, well, you can do that. Now, I wouldn't have given maybe some of the other kids that option, but I gave it to her because I knew her character, and she won. She's just not a quitter. She just doesn't quit. She takes ownership, even at that young age. And she says, well, Dad, I don't want to let you down. Honey, it's not about letting me down, babe. It's about letting you down. Like, you have a vision to touch all of, Asia, and so you thinking about becoming a doctor and going to, to India or something. You think it's going to be easier there than it is making phone calls? Like, making phone calls pretty easy about, what your future life's going to be. Well, you're right, Dad. Well, how do I do it, Dad? Well, now she's thinking. Like, now she's not whining. She's not complaining. Like, now she's like, how do I go ahead and fix this situation? Now she's a mother of 4, 7, 5, and twin 2.5 years old. And owns, 3 of her own companies, very industrious. She's a problem solver. She takes ownership. She figures it out. Like, she's a hard worker. She's committed. And so we talked a little bit, and I said, well, honey, you're an amiable, analytic personality. Get in there, person. So we kind of put together a strategy. Again, whining doesn't get the job done, doesn't fix anything. I mean, if you whine enough, maybe a few people will give you something. Like, maybe if you have a weak mom and dad, they'll give you something. If you have weak grandparents, if you whine, they'll give you something. Maybe if you have a weak government or a weak boss or, a weak community base or weak people, weak, sloppy, lazy, undisciplined people give people things when they whine. They just do. That doesn't serve anybody really good. I mean, it stops the whining in the short term, but it doesn't deal with things at the core. So she calls me the next day. She's like, Dad, she was so excited. I used that personality stuff, and I got a couple of appointments. Like, she was so pumped up. And there's stories. I'm of the 7 kids. There's stories after stories after stories of those types of things that built, allowed adversity into our children's life. And other parents are like, 6 out of your 7 kids are millennials? It's like, yep. And like they all left your house, at 18? Yep. And they're all living independently without you support? Yep. Do they all have college degrees? Some do, some don't. Did you pay for their? No, they paid for their own. See, I gave them a gift. It was interesting. My son, who's 29, he owns his own company, just moved out to Tucson, has a great position, owns his own company, doing really well. And I think he was like maybe 21, 22, and he had a friend that his dad was paying for college, and he was talking to my son, and he said to his friend, he said, Ted, I mean, it's cool that your dad's paying for your college, but my dad taught me how to work. And he doesn't, my son, he went to college some, but it wasn't for him. And he's making a lot more than a lot of college graduates are making. Because he's a hard worker, he's disciplined, he's industrious, he's going after it. So hopefully that's helpful, kids. Who else has comments, questions, thoughts?
I do. So I was reading over some daily posts and stuff that you have made the other day, and there was one that you were talking about how parenting, like how your parents did, doesn't always work today. For example, making children finish everything on their plate when obesity is such an issue.
Like that, sorry, I got to interrupt. Little drama here. Like, my parents were really effective. They went ahead and had a clean, and my grandmother, same thing. She lived to 99, and they had a clean plate club. Like, who is a clean plate club? Like, I'm telling you, when you talk about clean, I'm talking clean. You use bread to, mop up your plate. Like, I'm talking clean. Like, and so it doesn't work. So there's now more people dying in the world based on obesity than starvation. So it's like you can't really say, hey, there's people starving in Africa. They're dying of obesity. But the principle is the same. The principle is the same. It's stewardship of all of our resources. It's discipline. Don't take more than you can eat. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I was reading that, I was thinking about, because with my children, I have the same fear. Like, I don't want to force them to finish and eat something when they're not hungry. So I came up with the way I do it is they have to finish their vegetables, period, before leaving the table. And if they want any seconds, they have to finish what's on their plate. And I was thinking about it, and I feel like there's a connection somewhere between that and business, and I feel like what you were talking about on Grandpa's Magic Couch today, there's a connection between that, but I'm not quite sure how to connect those dots.
Sure. So I'm not saying, when I see what my kids went through in their teenage years, some of them are going through now, I'm very humbled as a parent. So I would not classify myself as a stellar parent. Other people have said, you've done really good. Other people have said you have indigo children, all 7 of them, whatever. So there's a lot of humility. So I'm not saying my way is the best way. It's a way to parent. There's a reasoning and a thought and intention probably behind everything. I think the benefit of making them, finish all of their food, my wife is not the same way, so she's different, definitely different, which makes it harder for the kids and harder for both of us because, hers is one standard, mine is a different standard. But it also helps the kids to understand, hey, there's differences. So for me, I think nobody, they're not going to die if they have to eat too much. Like, hello, figure out how to go ahead and portion yourself. And if you don't like it, well, then, whatever. So I think that it's good to make them eat everything. So I would follow my parents and my grandparents, my wife, she would believe something different. I think the concept is like teaching kids, somebody paid for that food, which means they had to work hard for it. Somebody went ahead and worked hard to prepare that food. Somebody worked hard to grow that food. There's a whole bunch of work. There's a whole bunch of work that went into that food, and you didn't have to do any of it. Like, you didn't have to work to buy it. You didn't have to work to grow it. You didn't have to, put seed in the soil. You didn't have to do any of the work to get it to the table. You didn't have to do any work to buy it. You didn't have to work any work to prepare it. And so I think teaching kids to appreciate other people's work and to be stewarding of other people's 7 T's: time, talents, treasure, trust, truth, temple, and thought. Like, it's not just my money. It's not just my food. It's not just my house. It's not my car. It's like, how do we steward? Be the best stewards of everyone's 7 T's, and I think that's important. Other questions or thoughts?
No, I don't think so.
Anyone else have anything else?
I think we're all filled up.
Cool. All right. So when we look at the quantum thinking, it's an awakening. Like, whoa! That's what I love about kids. Like, they're like, whoa, Grandpa! Like, I come down to my 7. It's funny when we had little girls. Like, I got so excited when I saw them, and they got so excited. And then one of my adult daughters went ahead and said, "Dad, you never get so excited, when I come into the room." I'm like, "Well, you don't respond like they do." She did it once, and she was all disappointed that I didn't respond because I was so shocked by it. Anyways, an awakening is like Paul Weiner says, a goosebump moment. It's like, whoa, that's so cool. Taking ownership and then working hard, smart, working in multiple different levels, and then caring. And then the quantum thinking is connecting all of this. The internalization model, awakening, why. So questions, listen, see, intention, think, capability, internalization, do. Like, if you think you understand what I said, I don't think I understood it. I mean, I understood it to a certain level, but a lot of times I think adults go, "Oh yeah, I get it. I understand it." Like, they're not drilling deep into the topic. So an awakening comes from questions, and then we need to listen and connect that back into our why, our life vision, and that gives us ability to see new insights, which purifies our intention, and then that leads to radical thinking, which leads to leverage additional capability. So when people say it is what it is, well, maybe it is what it is because you're lazy, sloppy, undisciplined, and pathetic. Maybe that, I don't know. And so when we have additional capacity, capability, we don't have to say, like, little girls getting raped, 30 times a day, can I stop that? I can. Oh, how? Like, I gotta have leverage. I gotta have capability to do that. And that leads to change, which comes through internalization. So internalization leads to change. And then we do something and it fails. That's the hardest thing, I think, to teach kids. Like, it fails. And then we get it. That's the human experience. And then we go back and start all over again with an awakening. Or we succeed, and then we jump to another dimension, and then we fail. So if you have any questions on anything we covered, connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll-free 888-230-2300. That's 888-230-2300. Or if you're calling in outside the U.S., call a U.S.-based number, 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.